You chase wealth, thinking it will solve your problems. But have you asked, what dangers wait once you achieve it? This video will expose the hidden traps that destroyed rulers, merchants, and entire civilizations so that you may avoid their fate. Listen carefully, for this is a law of life written not in ink, but in the blood of kings and merchants. The moment you acquire wealth, you no longer live in the same world. You believe you are surrounded by admirers, companions, and allies. But understand this, your wealth is the magnet and men are iron. They do not draw near because of your character, but because of your gold. Men are not loyal to your soul, they are loyal to what you can provide. And history proves this again and again. Consider Caesar. He did not fall in poverty, nor was he slain because he lacked influence. He fell because the vast treasure of Rome, the spoils of conquest, and the crown of supreme power were in his grasp. Those closest to him, the very men who ate at his table, were the ones who struck their daggers into his flesh. Why? Because wealth does not build friends. It builds opportunists, and opportunists always calculate where their advantage lies. When a man is poor, he is invisible. His friends are few, but those few may be true, for there is nothing to gain from his company but his character. Yet once fortune smiles on him, watch how suddenly the banquet hall fills, how the doors of his house are knocked day and night. Do you think these new companions are moved by love or by loyalty? No, they are moved by appetite, and appetite has no gratitude. The wealthy man must live with suspicion, for every smile may conceal a dagger. Do not be deceived by warm embraces or golden words. History shows that the rise of wealth always invites two shadows: envy and ambition. Envy burns in the hearts of those who cannot rise to your station, and ambition festers in the hearts of those who would take it from you. Consider the tale of Croesus, king of Lydia, the man whose name itself became a symbol for wealth. He believed his gold made him untouchable, that his fortune was proof of divine favor. But what did it bring him? His riches lured Cyrus the Great to march upon him, and when Lydia fell, his treasure became the prize of another. The lesson is merciless. Your wealth is never only yours. It is seen by others as theirs, in waiting. And what of families? Does wealth preserve harmony? No, it shatters it. Brothers who once shared bread now quarrel over inheritance. Sons plot against fathers, and wives become conspirators. The house of wealth is rarely united, for gold is a poor foundation for loyalty. Men may endure poverty together, but rarely do they endure riches without conflict. You may imagine that generosity will shield you, that if you distribute your wealth, if you share your table, if you give gifts, you will secure friendship. But generosity is never enough. Give once, and they will expect twice. Fail to meet their hunger, and they will despise you more than if you had given nothing at all. The truth is, bitter wealth makes men entitled, not grateful. Even rulers have discovered this too late. Consider the fate of Roman emperors. Those who lavished soldiers with gold bought only temporary allegiance. For when another general arrived with greater promises, loyalty shifted in an instant. Wealth cannot chain loyalty, it only rents it. And what can be rented today can be purchased by another tomorrow. The wealthy man becomes a stage, and around him actors appear. The flatterer bows, the merchant smiles, the priest blesses, and the courtier whispers sweet words. But behind the curtain, each rehearses betrayal. They weigh your fortune against their desire, and they will choose desire every time. Do not imagine yourself beloved, imagine yourself useful. And the moment your usefulness fades, you will see how swiftly love turns to indifference, or worse, to hatred. This is why wealth must never be confused with friendship. True friends are tested in hardship, but wealth makes hardship scarce, and so you are surrounded only by shadows. And shadows cannot be trusted. Understand this clearly: wealth is a crown made of fire. From a distance, it dazzles, it impresses, it commands attention. But the man who wears it feels the burn against his skin, and he cannot remove it without losing everything. This is why those who rise to fortune must sharpen their perception. They must learn to read eyes, to weigh words, to see the envy hidden beneath praise. History does not honor the knave rich man. He is remembered only as a feast for wolves. The ones who endure are those who treat wealth not as a shield, but as bait, carefully rationed, carefully hidden, and never flaunted without purpose. For once displayed, it will summon not friends, but predators. Many men believe that gold itself is power. They imagine that coins alone command respect, that treasure alone builds empires. This is a lie. Wealth without power is like a fortress built of sand. It glitters under the sun, but collapses with the first wave of envy or ambition. Look at the merchants of Florence, men who carried chests of gold across Europe. Some believed their money alone would keep them safe, but their downfall was written the moment they confused riches with strength. The Medici understood this truth. They did not merely count their coins. They used them to buy influence, to place allies in the church, to secure magistrates, to weave themselves into the very veins of the city. Their wealth became a weapon, a shield, and a ladder. And because they converted gold into power, they rose from mere bankers to rulers. Now imagine the merchant who hoards his wealth, who builds no alliances, who wields no influence. His fortune sits like meat on the table, attracting wolves from all sides. A jealous rival conspires against him, a corrupt official seizes his assets. A desperate mob plunders his home. He thought his gold would protect him. But gold that is not bound to power is nothing more than bait for stronger men. History provides endless examples. Consider the fate of Darius of Persia. His empire overflowed with riches, but when Alexander advanced, that gold meant nothing. The Persian armies lacked loyalty, their generals lacked unity, and their king lacked the cunning to wield power. Alexander, with fewer resources but sharper will, took the treasure of Persia as if plucking fruit from a weak tree. Darius had wealth, but Alexander had power, and power devours wealth with ease. Even in Rome, men who inherited fortune without authority quickly learned their riches made them vulnerable. They became the targets of ambitious senators, of generals with legions, of emperors hungry for confiscation. The Roman treasury itself changed owners again and again, not because the gold could fight, but because it could be seized. You must understand that money is not an army, not a fortress, not a loyal friend. It can buy these things, yes, but only when wielded by one who understands that wealth is a servant, not a master. The man who clings to wealth without seeking power is like a farmer who gathers grain but never guards the barn. Soon enough, he will find himself starving while others feast on what was once his. Think also of the common mistake men who believe that generosity alone will protect them. They spend lavishly, thinking it buys loyalty. But without power to enforce respect, generosity only breeds contempt. When the gift stops, so too does the loyalty, and the generous man finds himself poorer and abandoned. Wealth alone cannot command men. It must be tied to authority, to fear, to respect. The lesson is sharp. Reaches unguarded by influence are fragile. To possess gold without power is to invite thieves, traitors, and tyrants. Those who endure are the ones who transform their wealth into structures of control. They build networks, secure alliances, place men in offices, purchase soldiers not once but for as long as needed. They turn gold into a web of obligations and fears, until the wealth itself vanishes from sight and only the power remains. Do not envy the man who flaunts fortune but lacks strength. His road is short, his ruin inevitable. Instead, observe how history honors those who saw wealth not as an end, but as the beginning of a greater strategy. Men believe wealth will make them strong, but more often it weakens them. For when gold is converted into comfort, when power is exchanged for pleasure, the will that built empires begins to decay. Luxury is not a reward. It is a poison that seeps into the heart, softening resolve and dulling ambition. Look to Rome, the eternal warning to all who confuse strength with indulgence. In her youth, Rome was forged in iron. Her soldiers wore simple armor, her leaders slept in tents. Her citizens endured hardship with discipline and pride. That Rome conquered the world. But when her coffers overflowed with treasure, when her streets filled with silk, feasts, and spectacles, the very fire that made her invincible began to fade. Senators grew drunk on excess, generals fattened themselves on gold, and the people became addicted to bread and circuses. The empire that had been feared across continents collapsed not under the swords of barbarians, but under the weight of its own indulgence. Luxury changes the very soul of a man. The poor man rises at dawn, sharpened by hunger, his mind fixed on survival and conquest. The wealthy man, lulled by silk sheets and endless servants, begins to wake later, think slower, and demand more pleasure instead of more glory. His ambition is replaced by appetite, his courage by cowardice, and his sharpness by sloth. This transformation is not immediate. It creeps upon him slowly, until one day he discovers he has become a prisoner of comfort, incapable of enduring even a fraction of the hardship that once made him strong. Consider the Persian kings who drowned themselves in endless banquets, their palaces filled with dancers, wine, and perfumes. They believed their empires eternal, yet when Alexander arrived with hardened soldiers, the Persians were swept aside like leaves in the wind. Their armies were vast, their treasuries overflowing, yet luxury had eroded their discipline, and gold could not compensate for the courage they had lost. Luxury is cunning, for it disguises itself as reward. A man tells himself he has earned the feast, the fine clothes, the endless pleasures. But what begins as reward soon becomes necessity, and what becomes necessity soon becomes weakness. The man who cannot live without luxury is a man easily defeated. Threaten to strip him of his comforts, and he will yield before he fights. Even within families, luxury corrupts. The founder of a dynasty may rise from nothing, hardened by struggle. He builds wealth and power through sacrifice. But his sons, born into silk, inherit not his discipline, but his indulgence. They squander what he built, blind to the fact that comfort is a poor teacher. History shows countless noble houses that rose in one generation and fell in the next, undone not by enemies, but by the softening hand of luxury. You must understand, the danger of luxury is not in the gold itself, but in what it teaches the mind. It teaches that pain is to be avoided, that effort is unnecessary, that indulgence is the purpose of life. Such men are easy prey for enemies. An army of disciplined, hungry men will always crush an army of indulgent ones, no matter how richly dressed or well-fed they may be. The wise ruler, therefore, treats wealth not as a cushion but as a weapon. He resists the temptation to drown in indulgence, and he ensures his people do the same. He may give them bread, but he reminds them of war. He may grant them leisure, but never without labor. He keeps them sharp, for he knows that once luxury takes full control, neither throne nor fortune can be defended. Luxury is the silent enemy of greatness. It whispers comfort, but delivers ruin. It promises reward, but breeds decay. And history remembers not the feasts, nor the silks, nor the pleasures, but only the fall that came after. Gold does not change men, it reveals them. Poverty hides envy, conceals ambition, and suppresses greed. But when wealth enters the room, masks fall away, and the true nature of those around you is uncovered like rot beneath a polished floor. When a man is poor, he walks unseen. His companions treat him as an equal, not because they respect him, but because they have nothing to gain from him. In this state, envy sleeps, and ambition lies dormant. But let fortune smile upon him, let him suddenly become wealthy, and you will witness a transformation. Brothers who once embraced him will begin to compare, friends who once cheered for him will begin to question, and allies who once supported him will begin to scheme. Wealth awakens the hidden hungers of men, and those hungers rarely lead to loyalty. Look to the courts of kings. Around the throne stand courtiers, smiling, bowing, flattering. Yet their flattery is not affection, it is calculation. Each man asks himself, how may I use this wealth? How may I take a portion for myself? And when the opportunity arises, the same lips that praise the king will whisper betrayal. Consider the fall of Richard II of England. Surrounded by nobles who professed loyalty, he poured out favors and treasures upon them. Yet in time, those same nobles, swollen with envy of one another and ambition for greater reward, rose up to strip him of his crown. His wealth did not buy loyalty, it revealed greed. Even within families, wealth is the most dangerous inheritance. A father may believe his fortune will unite his sons, but more often it divides them. One believes himself entitled to more, another believes himself overlooked, and all believe they deserve the crown of inheritance. History shows brothers turning swords upon one another not for survival, but for gold. Think of the Ottoman princes, bound by blood yet taught that wealth and empire were prizes worth killing for. Their brotherhood ended in murder because wealth revealed ambition more powerful than blood itself. Do not imagine that generosity will shield you. If you give, you will be loved, but for a moment. The truth is, men grow accustomed to gifts. What you give once, they expect again, and when you fail to provide, they call you stingy, unworthy, even treacherous. Your wealth exposes not gratitude but entitlement. The beggar who once bowed at your gate will soon demand your gold as if it were his by right. This is the cruel irony of wealth. The more you possess, the more others feel justified in taking from you. They cloak their envy in noble words, speaking of justice, fairness, or divine will. But beneath the mask, it is always hunger. The Roman historian Sallust once observed that when riches grew in Rome, so too did greed, corruption, and treachery. Men who had once lived simply now plotted endlessly, not to serve the Republic, but to strip their rivals of gold. Wealth made their ambitions visible. The wealthy man lives in a hall of mirrors. Every smile he sees may reflect ambition. Every embrace may hide betrayal. Every toast may carry poison. He cannot tell the true friend from the hidden enemy, for both wear the same mask. Only when the test comes, when he is no longer able to provide, when he withholds, when he resists, does the truth reveal itself. And the revelation is always bitter. Wealth, therefore, becomes not only a possession but a trial. It tests not only the man who holds it, but everyone around him. It forces men to show what they are. The loyal become more loyal, the ambitious more ruthless, the envious more dangerous. And in this way, wealth becomes a mirror of human nature, a mirror that reflects truths many would rather remain hidden. Men often believe that wealth builds walls high enough to protect them, gates strong enough to keep out danger, and soldiers loyal enough to guard their sleep. Yet history teaches otherwise. Gold may buy comfort, but it does not buy safety. In truth, wealth paints a target on the back, and the illusion of security is often the beginning of ruin. Imagine a rich merchant who travels with caravans across Europe. He surrounds himself with guards, builds a grand house, and fills it with treasures. He believes his wealth has insulated him from harm, but the very guards who protect him are the ones who may betray him if offered more. The grand house that displays his fortune also displays his vulnerability. The treasures he hoards are not his shield. They are the beacon that draws wolves to his door. This lesson is etched deeply into the annals of history. Consider the fate of Constantinople. For centuries, it was the richest city in the world, filled with palaces, gold, and treasures gathered from 3 continents. Its rulers believed its walls impenetrable, its wealth eternal. But when Mehmet the Conqueror marched upon it, the great city fell. The gold that had promised safety became the prize that drove its enemies to persist until its defenses cracked. The illusion of wealth as protection was shattered in a single siege. Or look to the French nobility before the Revolution. They lived in palaces, surrounded by splendor, convinced their status and wealth guaranteed permanence. They bathed in luxuries while peasants starved. But wealth created not a wall around them, but a fire beneath them. The envy of the people grew until it burned away their false security. Their castles became prisons, their jewels became shackles, and the guillotine devoured them one by one. The wealthy man often forgets that his fortune is visible to all. What he calls security, others call opportunity. The poor man may walk in obscurity, invisible to robbers and rulers alike, but the rich man carries a torch in the dark. Every eye follows him. Every hand itches to seize what he carries. He mistakes comfort for invincibility, not realizing that the higher the throne, the sharper the fall. Even kings, surrounded by armies, have discovered this bitter truth. History is filled with monarchs who believed themselves safe, guarded by thousands, only to be betrayed by one man within their circle. For wealth does not purchase loyalty, it merely rents it. A soldier who serves for gold will serve another for more. A minister who flatters you for rewards will flatter your rival if your generosity falters. Security purchased by wealth is fragile, for it depends not on devotion but on appetite, and appetite is never satisfied. Think of the Borgias, whose fortune and power dazzled Italy. They believed themselves untouchable, protected by riches and influence. Yet their security was a mask. Poisoned banquets, shifting alliances, and endless conspiracies exposed the truth. Their gold made them feared, but never safe. Every ally was a potential traitor, every guest a possible assassin. Their wealth built palaces, yes, but those palaces were filled with shadows. The illusion of security also breeds complacency. The rich man grows lazy, convinced that his walls, his guards, his fortune will shield him from danger. He forgets vigilance, he neglects discipline, and in that negligence he becomes most vulnerable. His enemy, driven by hunger, sharpened by necessity, waits patiently for that moment of weakness and strikes with devastating force. The wise understand that wealth is a double-edged sword. It can hire protectors, but it also attracts enemies. It can build fortresses, but fortresses fall. It can buy soldiers, but soldiers can be bought again by another. True security never lies in gold itself, but in the power, cunning, and vigilance with which that gold is wielded. The greatest mistake men make with wealth is to believe it is a god. They bow before it, sacrifice their lives for it, and measure their worth by its weight. But gold is not a master, it is a servant. And when a man forgets this, he becomes its prisoner. Look at the rulers who rose and fell through the ages. Those who commanded wealth but did not worship it left their names carved in history. Those who worshipped wealth above all else are remembered only for their downfall. Wealth is a tool, and tools must be wielded, not adored. A sword left in its scabbard is useless in battle, and gold left in chests, hoarded for its own sake, is equally powerless. Consider Marcus Crassus, once called the richest man in Rome. His fortune was vast, his estates countless, his coffers overflowing. But he hungered for more, not in power but in gold. He worshipped wealth, mistaking it for greatness. And so, when he marched against the Parthians seeking further riches, his greed led him to ruin. He was defeated, captured, and killed, his mouth filled with molten gold, a cruel symbol of the master he served. Crassus did not rule wealth, wealth ruled him. Now look at the Medici of Florence. They understood that gold had no value unless it bent to their purposes. Their wealth was not hoarded but woven into influence. They bought alliances, financed artists, bribed rivals, and placed popes upon the throne of the church. In their hands, gold was not a god but a servant that built a dynasty that lasted for centuries. They ruled wealth, and through it they ruled men. The worship of wealth blinds a man. It makes him timid, fearful of loss, obsessed with counting rather than commanding. He hesitates to act, for every decision seems a risk to his fortune, and in hesitation he loses opportunities. The man who rules wealth, by contrast, spends it with precision, like arrows loosed at chosen targets. He knows that gold must flow to create power, and that hoarding without purpose is a form of weakness. History reveals another truth: wealth that rules its master becomes his executioner. Kings who taxed their people into ruin to expand their treasures were eventually consumed by rebellion. Nobles who worshipped gold became easy prey for invaders, for they feared risking their riches on armies and defenses. The Spanish Empire, fattened by the silver of the New World, became intoxicated with wealth. They worshipped the flow of treasure, but they failed to transform it into lasting power. In time, their empire withered, and their gold enriched their enemies more than themselves. Worshipping wealth also enslaves the soul. The man who adores gold above all else forgets loyalty, honor, and even ambition. He reduces every choice to profit and loss, and in doing so, he makes himself predictable. Such men are easily manipulated, for all one must do is dangle greater fortune before them, and they will betray allies, abandon principles, and even sell themselves. The master of wealth, on the other hand, is feared, for he cannot be bought, since he understands that wealth is not the end but the instrument. The true ruler of wealth knows when to spend and when to withhold. He uses gold to silence enemies, to bribe officials, to build fortresses, to create dependence. He never worships the coin, for he knows it is worthless without the power it brings, and he is willing, when necessary, to cast aside treasure entirely if it secures his throne or his survival. Worshippers of wealth cling desperately to it, even when it drags them into ruin. Rulers of wealth wield it, abandon it, and reshape it according to their will. This is the final law of fortune. Wealth must obey you, or it will destroy you. Men who fail to rule their gold end by being ruled by it, chained not by iron, but by desire. Conclusion. Now you have seen it. The dark side of wealth, carved into history by emperors, merchants, and dynasties who believed gold would make them untouchable. Yet the truth is merciless. Wealth attracts enemies, corrupts the will, divides families, and exposes the hidden greed of men. It builds illusions of safety that crumble, and it destroys those who worship it instead of ruling it. The lesson is not to reject wealth, but to master it. To use it as a weapon, not a pillow. To bend it to power, not bow before it as a god. For wealth is never loyal, never eternal, never safe. It is a test. And only those who rule it with iron discipline will rise above it, while those who worship it will be buried beneath their own treasure.